not only am I a funeral director and embalmer, but I'm also, I used to run a cemetery broker company, and so I can answer some questions in regards to that. I'm a licensed crematory operator. And also was on the board of the Blood and Tissue Bank for many years, so I can talk a lot about body donations and things of that sort. So I've always been a life learner, and so hopefully I'll be able to answer a lot of your questions and that kind of stuff. Erica.
Well, my name's Erica. I'm a funeral director and embalmer, since we're going over everything, certified crematory operator and notary. So if anybody needs something notarized, here we go. My husband's also a funeral director, and I just had twin boys who are 5.5 months old. So also, I'd be happy to show everybody pictures. I can show them off.
She's a busy woman these days.
Yeah, I'm either running a funeral in the care center here, doing something at work, or I'm with my twin boys. So that's just a little bit about me. So.
And I'm Sam Routsong, 4th generation family member here at Routsong Funeral Home. Been full-time for about 8 years now, and one of these days when TR is ready, I'll be hoping to take over everything around here. So just kind of, taking it day by day, learning, working with families, and again, appreciate y'all being out here today. Hope you have some good questions for us. Yeah. Can we sit down now? Is that cool?
Yeah. Why don't I have to?
Because
I got stuck on that last week.
Alright, sounds good. So, some of the things that I've heard this morning that I'd like to reiterate, and Sam mentioned, and Sam's coordinated all this. He's like me with hair, like a kid. But we are, you're going to be able to see, we're the only certified green burial funeral home in the county. And so you're going to see, in order to have that certification, you have to have green burial information, caskets, baskets, and things of that sort. Also, we'll have the cremation, like Angie was mentioned about the sizes. We have a certain mechanism that we use to make sure that your urn would fit in the right niche spot and all that kind of thing too. And one thing that hasn't been mentioned is that we also have traditional cremation services. The difference between a memorial service and a funeral service is the whole body is present or it's not. If it's not, it's a memorial service. And cremated remains, or ashes as most commonly known, are there or not. So either way, it's called a memorial service. We also, about whole body donation, what we call a right state package, is that's a very popular package that we also have that hasn't been mentioned yet. In the traditional cremation line, we have caskets that are designed just for cremation. In other words, there's no metal parts in them, and so they're all completely combustible, which allows the body to be present for visitation and funeral, which helps a family in that end of life transition to view the body, to understand the reality that the death has occurred, and so we handle that. We also have casket rentals. You can rent a casket nowadays, and they're specially designed that they have the crematory mandates and the state of Ohio mandates that we have a cremation container that can be as minimal as a cardboard box, a maximum of an entire casket. So there's a lot of things in the cremation side of things, and Angie mentioned it. It's really a decision to treat the first decision: burial, cremation, traditional cremation, or regular cremation. So that's kind of how we see that tree going.
If I may, before we get any further, also, to keep it legal, we do have general price lists in the other room over here as well too. So one thing I always like to mention, if a funeral home's worth their salt, they know the laws, right? And the big one is whenever you start talking about funerals, services, merchandise, any of that kind of stuff, funeral home should have a GPL right there ready for you as well. So I got them on our table actually out there. I'd be happy to give those to any of you folks too. We can talk about general price lists, kind of what is included in those, things that may, generally they're kind of a confusing document because it's a government document, right? So they say we have to set it up a certain way, show you a certain way, and it's not always the easiest to understand. So we have different packages that make it a little bit easier to comprehend, commonly used items and that such. So pricing, you have full access to it. I've got them over there if you were interested, which hopefully you are by the time we're done talking. Yes, sir.
What are the steps to get to pre-planning? Set up an appointment or?
To do pre-planning, generally it's good to have a meeting set up. So just if you wanted to give us a call, send us an email. We even have an online pre-planning guide. So in a sense, you can do an entire pre-planning. You can fill out the information, pick out what you want, even pay for it, sign the paperwork, and you don't even have to step foot inside here. So we found a lot with COVID too. It was tricky because some people were comfortable coming in and some people weren't. So we've had to adapt and adjust to that. And we've really tried to embrace the technology that, our different suppliers offer. So we can do total virtual arrangements. I always find it's good to kick the tires, so to speak, to have folks in here because it's a little easier to understand some of the things that we talk about when you get a chance to see it. And tomorrow evening, we're actually doing like a little funeral home tour. We're going to have hors d'oeuvres, beverages, all that kind of stuff too. And we're actually going to take groups around and show you some of the different aspects of all that we're talking about as well. So
that includes our care center.
Yeah.
Too, so.
Yeah. So you get to see kind of where we do all our behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah. Secret room. Yeah.
Exactly. So, we hold ourselves to a high standard. So we're willing to show folks that at any point if they want to see those sorts of things too. So it should be an interesting tour. But to answer your question directly, sir, happy to give you a card, email me, whatever you'd like to do. Be happy to talk to you.
There's in pre-planning, we talked a little bit about it, but from the funeral standpoint, there's the legal documentation that we need to get information for. People don't realize that if and births are all filed in the county that the death or the birth occurred. So you can't, if you live in Georgia, you can't get your loved one's death certificate down there. It has to be in the county that the death occurs. A lot of people don't understand that starts here at the funeral home. We're now tied in with Homeland Security, the FBI, and all that kind of stuff, so that your social security number has to match the name or it bounces back, and we got some other issues that we have to deal with. So that goes from here to the doctor for certification or the coroner's office. Then it comes back to us where we file it downtown at Montgomery County, where we get a burial, cremation permit, whatever the circumstances are. So that's the first part of pre-arranging. The second part is kind of what you want to do with your services. Burial, cremation, do we want to have public service, private service? Are we going to be buried out of state? Are we going to be buried in state? Those kind of things are done. And we, at this funeral home, we like to make sure we get started with the obituary. Nothing brings about that I'm going to die like doing your own obituary. And we like to have that because your kids, when I sit in across from them, they don't know that you belong to that particular garden club or that particular lodge, or they don't know those kind of things when they sit down with us. So it's nice to have those things bullet pointed out that you like to have put on your obituary that you would put onto our website. So we'd like to make sure all those I's are dotted and T's are crossed. The other thing that's I just mentioned about our website, I did an obituary last year. It was $2,700 a day. They ran it for 3 days. That was $9,000 with obituaries they put in. If you notice, we've come up with what we call the short obituary that refers people to our website. We don't care how long it is. We charge you the same amount. It's I think $35 to put something on our website, and it's dynamic. If you misspell Aunt Gertie's name and Aunt Gertie calls you and says, "Hey, you misspelled my name," we can make that change. You can't do that in the newspaper. Pay a picture in the newspaper costs you an extra $100. We can have multiple pictures on ours, and we think that's well done too. So those are all things that are part of the pre-arrangement process, and we detail those items out. All of that, as mentioned before, is free of charge. Takes you a couple hours to get all that done. If you decide to prepay, then we can also help you with, in that matter also, which is an advantage to you that it frees the cost of the services and merchandise. Cash advances can vary. Okay, so did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did, but connected with that, do you have any connection with Wright State Archives?
That I know personally about, and no, we don't have any connection with Wright State Archives. You're talking about the historical place that families like the Kettering Foundation or the Kettering family or the Patterson family puts all their pictures, or NCR, that area. No, we don't have any connection with that. And why would that be good for us to do that?
Well, I may have a connection with putting some of my stuff at Wright State. But it's voluminous. That's what you talked about, obituaries, that's why I mentioned it.
Yeah, you know, those, and like was mentioned before, putting the QR code that Neil was talking about on your headstones, we've done that in the past where it refers back to our website where people can not only do have and see the obituary, the pictures that we put in that also, as well as what we call the video tribute that we do. That opens up a whole nother can of worms, which I think is one of the coolest things that's come down the pike in the funeral industry in my 50 some years here. We send that link out to your relatives and people download pictures that they may have of you. And so when we take that collage of pictures and give it to the next of kin, they can look at those pictures and say, hey, I didn't ever know you went fishing with Aunt Joe, or that's a great picture. Who's in that? That's your great grandfather. I've never seen that picture. So it's kind of neat because it brings all those pictures together, and that can also be done through our website also. So kind of like what you're talking about, they're more really in depth of a historical type of thing and everything. So you guys talk.
Okay, Erica, can you talk about the mechanism of pre-planning? Is it an insurance policy? Does it go to a trust? How does pre-planning and pre-arranging funeral work so that they can understand?
D, all the above.
Sure, so yeah, it's just, you said D, all of the above. So what we really do is we place that into an insurance company. So we work with Funeral Directors Life or FDIC. There's other entities out there, but we go with Funeral Directors Life, which means you pay us and then we send that to the insurance company, and then the insurance company holds on to that until you pass, and then we receive the funds at that time. So just as Tommy was saying before, when you pre-plan, it locks in the services and the merchandise. Cash advances are items that we can't control, such as if you want to pre-plan for the cemetery or flowers. Well, flowers today cost, let's say $200 or $300 for a bouquet or anything like that. But in 10, 15 years, it might be, $600. So you would just pay the difference of the cash advances. We just have all the cash advances that you prepaid then, take the cash advances now and just subtract.
One of the things I want to mention is when you pre-fund a funeral, what happened to us is the state of Ohio said that that interest that accumulates in that trust, which we keep as a funeral, that's how we're able to guarantee things, was taxable to you. So now we use untaxable method. Insurance is one of those ways that's considered as a non-taxable asset. We also can take it and irrevocably assign that to the funeral home, which means it's Medicaid approved and it's considered a non-asset account. So they can't pull any of the funds out of that until the funeral is performed. And the other thing about insurance that's really nice, it's very transferable. We have people that move to here or there, and you could just take that pre-arrangement with it. Now that funeral home probably won't guarantee the price. However, you haven't lost any money. You'll get all the principal and interest that is accumulated in that particular account that you could transfer to another funeral home. Like mechanism.
And if I may add context, the reason why the state did this back in the day was because, let's say, 50, 60 years ago, families would go to a funeral home, write them a check after they figured out exactly what they wanted, and then that funeral home would close. And then those poor people would be, we've already paid for our funeral, but there's no more funeral home, so the money's gone, essentially. So by putting it in a third party, it helps protect consumers because I cannot touch that money. It is still your money. Say you move to Florida, you could take it with you, essentially, that policy, right? But it helps to keep the consumer protected. And it also, like my dad was saying, does make it Medicaid exempt too. So that's another big benefit there. We do get into, working with families that have to do a spend down. And there's a lot of different ways that you can help yourselves by putting money into funeral stuff, buying plots. You can even buy plots for family members. There's all different kinds of ways that you can spend down that money so you get something for it instead of it just going straight to the government, essentially. There you go. There you go. There's all kinds of stuff that comes along with it. But essentially, the reason why we don't keep your money is because the state says so, but they have a really good reason for it, which I agree with.
We also have, in the state of Ohio is kind of the leader of states as far as the funeral and death care industry are concerned. There is a portion of your pre-arrangement funds that go to a trust at the state of Ohio. And unfortunately, there have been companies that have taken funds out of pre-arrangements in the past, and that fund supports those people and you can still have that trust fund and make a claim there. So it's kind of a backup. It's kind of like our Fort Knox of pre-arranged funeral. And so you're really lucky to be in the state of Ohio because of that. So forth, kind of like Fort Knox of trust funds.
Yeah. So if your funeral home did close down, essentially, and that did happen to people, or unscrupulous funeral homes did just take the money and then, funeral home owner goes off to prison because that's fraud. There is a fund in the state of Ohio that processes claims to actually pay for that funeral like the family had intended if something did happen to them. So that was another forward-thinking thing.
That's a good
the state
backup.
did. Yeah.
Good backup. So.
I prepaid my husband's funeral 2 years ago and he died last year.
Mhm.
And it all went well and it was beautiful, but I did owe a couple thousand after the fact because of decisions I had made.
Mhm.
Is that something to consider too?
Yeah, it is. And you're talking about it was in the cash advance items. I don't know which funeral home. Did you use our funeral home or?
Arlington in Cincinnati.
Arlington, Cincinnati. Yeah, they don't guarantee down there also the cash advances. And I always say, if you're going on Medicaid, I think it's very important that you overfund your pre-need area. And the reason is because you're not going to lose any money, but it'll cover some of the inflationary costs that happens. When I started this business, opening and closing was around $100, $75 to $100. That was quite a few years ago. Now, in some cemeteries, it's a couple of thousands of dollars. Okay, so in that amount of my lifespan, that's changed quite a bit. So we can't put enough money in there. There are some funeral homes that used to guarantee the cash advance items. They're losing their butt on those right now. They wish they wouldn't have done that. And so as a consequence, it's really, I think, good to beef up that cash advance.
For the third-party items.
For the third-party items. I think it's important that you use the person's fund whose benefit the funeral is for, and you use their money for their funeral. I think that's the right thing to do instead of having the kids have to shove, fork in and all that kind of
So
stuff.
you flirted with this. Can you explain to them, let's say that they pay a large amount
Yes.
and there's money for whatever reason left over.
Yes.
Do they lose that money?
No, it goes back to the family. Okay, so it's kind of a catch-22. If you're under Medicaid, we're required by law, if there's extra funds in there, to write it back to the estate of that individual, if there is an estate. If it's a gamble. You know, for instance, funerals are going up 8 to 10% a year, and our investments are going up about 3 to 4% a year. Well, doesn't take you long to figure out the math. It's cheaper for you to prepay a funeral than it is for you to put money into a CD. I was an economist in undergraduate school, so I look at things from an economist standpoint, and if you try to tell people you're better off prepaying your funeral than you are to get a CD, they go, yeah, really? You know, why do I want to do that? Well, the reason is economically, it's much better for you to prepay a funeral than to put the money in a CD. So,
You said earlier, you mentioned something about the Right State cremation program.
okay, Angie mentioned that. What happens is that all body donations, you're opening up a can of worms for me. There's 3 types of body donation.
I'm a worm.
You're a worm. One is whole body donation, and that's what Right State or any other medical. Now, a lot of people don't understand that, everybody thinks you're going to donate your body and you're going to come up with a cure for cancer. I mean, that's the premise. But they actually will sell your human remains to another facility, to dental schools or podiatry schools, or as real crash dummies. So you've signed off when you signed at Right State that they can resell your body to somebody else. But as she mentioned, everybody gets cremated afterwards. Okay? Very few of the bodies are actually used for medical science. I will tell you that. The other methods are like what we did, the blood and tissue bank here in Dayton. We're one of the largest tissue banks in the world here in Dayton, Ohio. And you can do tissue donation, which could go all the way to bone and skin and all those kind of things. The other type of donation is organ donations. People who get heart and lungs to save another person's life. In the state of Ohio, Ohio State Stadium, 125,000 people can sit there. That's how many people are waiting for an organ, that are waiting for an organ. It has to be the right, the person has blood types and all this kind of stuff that goes into that. So it's very rare that you can get donations. So, and just because you're on a license plate and say, I want to donate, doesn't necessarily mean that your body gets donated. Your next of kin still has to approve that from happening. Okay? So,
In regards to the package that we offer, we call it the Right State package. And the reason being is because we find that folks that a lot of the time went through that process of donating their body to science. And again, it's a personal choice that is totally for you guys to decide. But we find that there's something lacking because, you might get someone's ashes back 2 years, 3 years, a long time down the pike, and you never really had that opportunity to come together to have the funeral service. And I guess that's kind of my hill that I'll die on. People have been doing funerals forever. That's how we know about what life was like, 10,000 years ago. We find somebody's, remains in archaeology and all that, and then we've learned about, okay, so this was their practices when somebody did pass, and that's how it's just part of who we are as people. And so my biggest competition is not the guy down the street or the big funeral conglomerate that came into town. It's folks that think that they can, sweep death under the rug, right? And kind of, in a sense, pretend like somebody's life didn't happen because they didn't go through those necessary steps to have a visitation or a funeral service and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's great. I'm a proponent of utilizing a funeral home to actually have it in a controlled environment that is personalized to somebody that has passed. But realistically, it looks different for different people. When we do have families through here that do a direct cremation, I tell them, hey, we do a great job at really putting on a service that is representative of someone's life. But my advice to you is do something, do anything. Just even get the close family together when you go to, the cemetery, when you go to Woodland, have some kind of ceremony, because that is part of who we are as a human race.
I always tell people, you are gonna have a visitation and you are gonna have a funeral. It's gonna happen. They said, no, I don't want anything. I said, yeah, it is. It's gonna happen when you go to Dorothy Lane Market and you run into somebody who asks you about the death of your dad, or when you go to the gas station, or you meet somebody in a social or a restaurant. Those are many funeral services. Those are many visitations that you're gonna have. So like Sam said, it's good to get it all done out of the way at one location, a proper time, at an excellent place to do that.
And here becomes very personal experience. My father, the owner of Dodd's Memorials, the guy you would think gets all this, died last year and ended up not having anything because he thought it would spare money. And then we were going to have a service at the house. That fell through. I will tell you right now that I fully believe that my sister, my mother, a lot of the folks in the family, in the community, because my father was well known. John LaRock was my dad, no.
Very well known.
There's a lot of people that didn't get the opportunity to commune together. And it impacts your ability to grieve and your ability to move forward. And while I respect the decision, I so adamantly disagree with the decision that was made, and it is so heavily impacted people, and I don't think they fully realize it. So like Sam said, however you do it, and again, we'll be talking about this in my presentation too, do something. Because it brings the family together. And yeah, it is hard for the spouse, but it's no harder than, going to a play 2 weeks ago and having family you haven't seen in forever, and they're saying, I'm so sorry to hear about your dad. And you're like, okay, it's so vital. My second thing is, because they can't say it, understand that not all funeral homes are the same. There are private funeral homes, privately owned funeral homes. There are funeral homes that are owned by conglomerate companies from all over the world. SCI is a Texas company. There's other companies that are from out east. So there are basically chain funeral homes. I'm not saying for good or for bad. I'm just saying there are. And so understand as you go in and approach a funeral home, wherever it is, understand who's running the funeral home, what their background is, and just like anything, whether it become your monument, your cemetery, your funeral home, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. But really look into who you're working with, because my father used to say there's three people trust: their doctor, their priest, and their funeral director. Make sure you find a funeral director, because they're going to take care of your loved one at a time when you're the most vulnerable. And the funeral industry has gotten such a bad rap in the last few years because media grabs onto these one or two bad actors and tries to paint the funeral industry as this overpriced, taking it. It's just not true, folks. I've been around funeral directors and funeral homes my entire life, and the vast majority are people that honestly dedicate their lives to caring for your deceased loved one at the most vulnerable time in your life. That's what these people do.
I want to piggyback off that a little bit, and I appreciate you saying that, Neil. I will just say that do your research with funeral homes. Pick one that you trust. I will say that I am blessed to work at Routsong because it is family owned. And I'm just gonna be honest, I have worked at another funeral home that was company owned. And the one thing I truly hated about working there, I was blessed to get the experience. However, me being a funeral director and embalmer, I like to go on a residence call. Someone passes at their home. I like to go on the transfer. So we will go to the residence, speak to the family, take the decedent into our care. I can meet that family. Then I can do your service. Then I'll see you at the graveside. I will be with you from start to end. A lot of other conglomerate funeral homes, then you might see 4 different funeral directors. So, they may miss something. They know you missing details. It's just also here, I can do more of a life celebration. You want a popcorn machine? I'll get you a popcorn machine. You want something special? I mean, we once did one for a clown and we had a balloon, I want to say like balloon artist here. Everything. We had Margaritaville here once too. So we also serve beer and wine for some.
That Caballero that you see out front actually was used for a funeral. The woman, so my dad is good friends with the family and she was getting older, couldn't really maintain the car. So my dad bought it from her, fixed it up. She ended up passing a couple years later and, well, damn it, wouldn't you know, we're gonna use that Caballero, her car, to take her to the cemetery. So we got some looks going down 48 in Centerville when that happened, but it felt right to the family because it's just one of those little things that, you know, we love going above and beyond. So we've had some requests, some stuff that's really out there, and that's one of our strengths is that a corporation say, no, that's not our policy. We're not going to do that. If you come to me with something, I'm not going to tell you no. I'm going to say, okay, let's figure this out. Like let's see what we can do with this. And we can create some really cool stuff. I mean, I'm sure that might be part of the Q&A, but my dad will tell you, he's had fireworks at the cemetery before. He's,
Motorcycles.
yeah, he's done shotgun shells that have people's ashes in them to go and like do that whole thing. He does. So we're into saying yes to folks and making it meaningful for that person. And it looks different for everybody because we're all unique, you know?
You know, I just, you know, I'm kind of the old guy in the room here. And it's from the moment I kind of understood about how unusual is what I do, it's an amazing, if you think about this, I still can't get my head and grasp around this. It is a sacred rite that we do in funeral service. You people don't know me from Adam, and then you say, here's my dead son, or here's my dead husband, and you trust me with the care of that individual. I just have a hard time putting my grasp around that kind of trust that you, the public, give to us, that sacred right. And I think death is a very personal thing. And that's why I like being family. And I mean, you can't understand the joy I have for both of my sons to be in this business. You know, we've been in business for over 100 some years. We're the only family run and operated business in Centerville now. And now most of the other funeral homes we either bought or have sold out in Kettering also. So we're becoming very rare and far in between. And we have to work harder in order to do and to help you in that end of life transition. You know, our job is that when you get to the end of what we do, is that you know you're going to be okay. You know there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and we hope you also say that we did the right thing for you. So it's, you know, that's what I kind of try to instill in all of our. I don't have good employees. I have fabulous employees who work here. You know, they're all from the front office all the way through the back. They're just tremendous people, and I think they are.
I agree.
Yes, you have to.
Unbiased opinion, right?
So, you had a question back there.
I was just going to just mention that 20 years ago, I was in a situation with my mother that was a spend down situation.
Uh-huh.
And she eventually went to Wright State because she and I both signed up when the medical school was new.
Mm-hmm.
And we had the memorial service here.
Mhm.
And it was lovely. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
And probably less than a year, maybe 3 to 6 months later, her remains were returned, and she's now buried next to my dad. And Dodge did the dead stuff.
We like this lady.
Yeah, and it was what could have been a horrible experience, and it was just made smooth and easy, and I can't recommend it.
You know, I can't sit up here and tell you that it's easy. because it's not.
Right.
You know, when we make a choice to love someone, we make a choice to hurt when we lose that loved one. And the alternative, not to love, I don't know about you guys, I'm not in that boat. So, you know, my dad passed a couple of months ago, and last week I tried to call him on the phone to answer a question. You know, my dogs, I lost all three of my dogs in a 2-month time period. Now, this is after 40 years of owning dogs. And it took me a year not to get out of bed and go right to the door to let them out. You know, there's holes there that aren't filled. It's gonna take a while to get over those things. And so, I'm glad we had the ceremony that we did for my dad. And he was very Masonically involved, and some of his Masonic rings were passed down to my sons. And that's very important to me. What they do with them, I don't know, but it was important for me to see that heritage had been passed down. That may be selfish for me, but I don't know how the boys feel about it, but, you know, every life needs to be celebrated. Every life needs to be lived, and then memorialized at a cemetery with a monument. You need a place to go back to. I've been back to my dad's grave now about 4 or 5 times, and you know, I like to go there and offer a little prayer for him and my mom, or together now, and that's important to me. That's my kind of a respite. A cemetery is a beautiful place to go to clear your head, and it's just exactly that. My hectic days, I can drive there, talk to my mom and dad. For some reason, I always get an answer before I leave. So that's a good thing. So yeah.
Similar to that, I'd like to add, I was a Woodland Cemetery guide for about 10 years.
Yeah.
And I love that place.
Yeah.
I still go there. We used to walk our dog there.
Yeah.
But the tours I did was a historical tour, and I know that so well,
Yeah.
having done it. I stopped doing it during COVID, but I know, even now in my mind, I know that tour.
Oh,
And
it's amazing, the history, and right in the middle, there's a beautiful green spot right in the middle of the city and stuff. I did the memorial service for the Wright brothers for which was one of my benchmark times in my life. And Neil Armstrong and I were talking about how beautiful the cemetery and stuff is. And I told him, yeah, Irma Bombeck's underneath that rock over there, you know? And I said, the Wright brothers, I said, that piece of rock over there, that used to be a holding area for the winter because we couldn't dig when my grandfather was there in the wintertime. So they stored all the bodies in that crypt over there. And the Wright brothers were going to their grave. I mean, it's amazing stories there that they have. And I personally like the jazz and wine parties that you have up on the top of the hill. You still doing that, Angie? Huh?
I have to say something else, so you don't mind my saying that to me.
Sure.
I always ask her before I do anything, but one of the
As if you're gonna stop it.
One of the reasons I like Woodland and doing that is, in my particular case, I work for Kettering, and that place holds so much history for me.
Yeah.
That when I first got out of college, I went to work for Kettering. And I'm a Kettering speaker now. I don't know if anyone who's ever heard me speak, but I still do it. And I may get back to Woodland, who knows?
That's good to hear.
But anyway, that Kettering and the memorial and the mausoleum there is just amazing. I still go there occasionally.
Mama Kay, I dated Mama Kay's granddaughter when she passed away, and their family has an amazing. Think about what the Kettering family has brought. Not only back then, Boss Kid, but you think about today with their trusts and what they've done, Sloan Kettering, and all the impact they've done The Denver airport is on the Kettering family's land. Just amazing things that family has done. And they're here in Dayton, Ohio. You know what I'm trying to say? They're here in Dayton, Ohio, and they're buried right there where, at Angie's place and stuff. There's a lot of things that are important about cemeteries that I wanted to mention. When I became a cemetery broker years ago, they have things called trust funds, and those are the things that she mentioned about pushing the snow, and cutting the grass, and making sure that the flowers are watered, and you have a wonderful environment like they have at Woodland. Their trust funds are amazing. They have a trust fund for their trees, for God's sakes. They're the only. Did you mention about your being an arboretum?
I didn't have enough time.
They have every.
Just time for Angie next year, I guess.
They have every tree that's indigenous to Ohio there at their cemetery. You know what a cool thing is it for the University of Dayton botany students to come across and actually see the trees that they're studying and that they're all in one spot? I think that's a cool thing.
Well, I think it's important for people to know on the cemetery side, we talked about the fact that there's conglomerates that own funeral homes.
Yeah.
There's conglomerates that own cemeteries too. You need to understand what cemetery you're getting into. You need to ask this question. You need to ask how the perpetual care fund's doing. I mean, I'm the president of the board of Woodland Cemetery in Xenia. And I can tell you that back in the 90s, the cemetery board there ruined the perpetual care fund because they thought, we're going to buy this big mausoleum, and if you build it, it was like Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. That thing still sits 70% empty because they didn't do it right. And that's where all of our money is. So we have built that fund back up. But there's a lot of cemeteries out there that don't have the perpetual care funds that are struggling with this. All I'm saying is when you do the shopping, know who you're getting in bed with, whether it's a funeral home, a monument dealer, or a cemetery, and make sure that they are going to be able to not only care presently, but care for you in the future.
Yeah, you got mausoleums are beautiful things. They got roofs. And roofs need to be repaired after a few years. You got to make sure that they're solid enough to be able to put a roof on that building. Woodland is one of the solid companies in town. There's some places I wouldn't take my dogs.
That most expensive cemetery in Dayton that was maybe mentioned earlier, we're not gonna say names, but corporate owned. And they're opening and closing it at minimum, it's like $2,000.
So they're
Corporate owned.
That's because somebody came in before and took all the money out of the trust fund. So, yeah, you've been having your hand up.
I know, I'm sorry.
I hope you use deodorant.
My question is, I love everything you said about the cemetery and having a place for the respite for you to go visit and be. But with this new wave of people really moving towards more green burials and alternative ways of preparing for their end of life and celebrating their end of life, I mean, the West Coast is composing bodies, what is your response to that if a family came in and that was, based on, you have your views and your thoughts and wanting to do things the way the families want to do them, and how does that all incorporate into how your practice is evolving?
I think, how's it involved, Chase? I remember my father and his friend wanted to be cremated, and my dad had no clue what to do. It was the first cremation in our history. And we didn't even have a crematory in Dayton, Ohio. We now have like 7, 8. So that's changed quite a bit. I was with a friend of mine a couple of days ago. He's on the West Coast. He's got an 85% cremation rate. Okay, we're about 50%, 60% here. Has it changed us drastically? And the problem that I've seen is because we've been really stupid in the funeral industry to allow people to get away that they think cheaper is better. And they don't understand the power of memorialization. They don't understand, you know, and you think about how our society has come up. We have the Happy Meal, right? It's a package. It makes us happy and stuff. And we control everything. We control what time we get up. We control our environment that we go to work with. We have this cubicle that we control our environment in, and we're control freaks. And then we get to the point where we lose somebody and we have no control over it. And it drives us crazy. And we think by doing nothing that it's going to be okay. And there are psychologists and people, a friend of mine, Alan Wilfeld, has a whole ranch in Colorado that is every week a new group of people that have not grieved properly have to go to sort through all that crap that they could have done by just having some kind of a memorialization. There's a lot of people getting rich over our societal norms now that say we don't have to do this. We can go to the funeral home and go get the Happy Meal and think that Happy Meal is going to make us satisfied.
If I made that
Yeah.
time check, what do we got, Neil?
We are at about 12:30, it's about lunchtime, so we can just wrap this up and then we can get, you're gonna have to guide us on how lunch is gonna go.
We got that covered.
But yes, so you guys wrap it up and we'll get moving into lunch.
Any last quick questions that we maybe didn't address, or, I mean, we're gonna be around, you can ask us all kinds of questions.
Mine's not a question, it's more of a, it's praising, actually. So just hearing all of you talk, when I was 36 years old, I lost my husband. I lived right down the street, and my father-in-law, who lived in Delaware, started calling around for me, seeing, you know, price shopping, funeral homes. And I said, nope, I'm going to Routsong. And I came in here the next day, and it was a Sunday, and I sat down and found out I didn't have the life insurance that I thought I had for my husband. Ended up having 0. Complete breakdown, you know, the whole thing, right? So
At
the
36 years
numbness
old.
at 36 years old, right? No, we didn't have a plan. Are you kidding me? We weren't from this state. None of our family was here, right? So we had all these things. And at 36 years old, I had to deal with that. And I came in here and I sat down with my funeral director, came in to that room over there, which I thought I would hate for the rest of my life. Seeing it today, I can see every aspect that my funeral director put into that celebration of life. There is a special touch that you guys put on these moments in our lives. I was so impressed with what my funeral director did. I came in one day afterward, I brought cupcakes for everyone, and I said, I have to tell somebody how wonderful this experience has been. And here comes TR. And I tell him all these things that she did for me, and he acted like it was like nothing. Like, okay, so what are you, like, what's the big deal? It was bobbers, and my husband was a fisherman. It was bobbers and gummy sharks and stuff that, like, she asked me these questions about him, and she put it all together. And that room looked like a fishing, you know, like his vest was there. I bawled my eyes out as everything was leaving my house before the ceremony. But when I walked in here, it looked like him. It was him. And I will always see him in there. And that can't happen I know that doesn't happen everywhere. So consider it a sales pitch for you guys, because you're not selling yourselves as it is, you're just sharing information. But I thank you for what you do, and I sing your praises all the time, and I want everyone around me to know that it can be that special, and it can be a memory that is something like I cherish it. Funerals don't have to be sad and miserable, but you have to have the right place, and you have to have the right people around you. Dodds, I know for a fact, does that. I know you guys do that, right? I know Woodland does that, both of them, by the way. I can attest to both, Woodland, Xenia, and Dayton. But thank you for all that you guys do, and even having these sorts of opportunities for people. I'm on a mission to normalize death, and that's what you guys are doing too. And so thank you for that. And so far, sorry for belaboring, but it's,
Thank you.
If I may, that's the stuff that keeps me going. It really does. This job has a way of wearing on you. and it is far from easy. There are days where I absolutely hate this job.
You carry the grief with us. You
And
carry the
it's
grief
hard.
with us.
It's hard not to when you're
Yeah.
when you're working with somebody and you're seeing what they're going through. It's you feel for them. There's no way that you can't. And even this year, we've had a hard year. We've lost a lot of people.
This
that,
year is this year. I'm in the death care business. This year sucks. Last night was a friend of mine who's 61 years old, just dropped over. Bodybuilder. My dad a couple months ago. My son-in-law 3 or 4 months ago. Penny, who did all of our catering services here for Belmont Catering, she fell over with a heart attack. One of my best friends this year. So I gotta say I'm pegged out. A little break here. This has been a hard year for me, and I think these guys get it, but I'm usually a guy that can take that and I'm a stubborn German Routsong, and I usually take that stuff and suck it up, buttercup, and
But thank you. That's the kind of stuff that keeps us going. That makes this job worth it to us. We're in it for the hugs. It's
And I
really
know you don't
well
hear enough, right? That's why I wanted to give the praise publicly, especially because I don't think people thank you enough for what you do, right? And it's such it's such a core piece of our lives. So, and it's not about the people who passed, right? We want them to pre-plan this so that we can grieve without the responsibility. Jewish people do it just right. They sit Shiva for 7 days. Everything's done. They don't have to worry about anything. They sit there and they're with their people for 7 days. We're doing some things wrong, I think. But these are the beautiful moments in life, and being distracted by all the other things that go with it is not what we should be doing. So
thank you for your kind words. I don't do compliments well. But like I say, if you're happy, tell everybody. If you're not, don't tell a soul.
Okay, let's give it up for our panel. I will tell you that as you're ruminating on these things, when we get later into the memorialization and age of green burial and cremation, we're going to be back into this. So as thoughts and processes, and by all means, I encourage all of our experts that are here, jump in. Because you're going to hear some themes over and over. I feel like I barely have to do my presentation because the passion that's come before me. You're going to hear a lot of recurring themes because of our passion. And Tommy hit it on the head. Midwesterners, the suck it up, we suck at death. We're terrible. The reason why I brought this to the Midwest, you go to New Mexico, it's a different Before I Die festival. I mean, they're talking about all sorts of crazy things. Here, it seems so foreign because we're just lousy. And there's reasons for that. And I actually have a quote from Dr. Wolfelt in my presentation. So you're going to hear a lot about those things, but understand that if we don't start communicating to people out of here, I want to see 50, 100, 150 people coming here doing this because it gets people comfortable to understand what's going on with death. And that's what this is all about. So again, thank you to you folks. We're going to let you transition into providing lunch for us, and I appreciate Routsong doing that as well as providing the space, as well as providing their compassion, their expertise. I can't thank them enough for all of that. So one more time,
So just take a moment. We're going to go ahead. We're going to grab some of the goodies for us. Stick around for lunch.
Oh my God, we're feeding you guys too?
Exactly.
He didn't get the memo.
How do they slip that into the budget?
Oh, absolutely.
By the way, you guys are welcome to walk anywhere around the funeral home. Just ask you not to go to the care center where it's not ready for you
We're
quite
doing
yet.
that tomorrow.
Doing that tomorrow.
I'll be
and-
in there.